The man accused of setting fire to the largest synagogue in the state pleading not guilty today to new federal charges filed against him last week.
His trial has been pushed back too. Stephen Spencer Pittman was indicted last month in connection with setting fire to Beth Israel congregation on Old Canton Road. Now, last week, a federal grand jury indicted Pittman on 2 additional charges of damage to religious property and use of fire to commit any felony. Now, his initial court appearance was scheduled for just hours ago on those new charges, but he waived his appearance for today's arraignment, pleading not guilty on all counts. As a result, the trial that was scheduled to begin next week has been rescheduled for April to give more time for both sides.